Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where we chat with startup founders just like you from all over the globe. Each episode, we bring you practical and actionable tips to help you escape the cubicle and begin your own startup journey. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
Here's a quick word from our sponsor, Podbrand Media.
As a business owner, new sales leads are essential. At Podbrand Media, we create a branded podcast for you to generate those leads by interviewing your best potential clients as subject matter experts. Not only creating great rapport, but also great content to share in your industry. Affordable and effective. Contact us today at podbrandmedia.com to learn more.
Recording started. This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my special guest today is Chase Kocher. Chase, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the chat.
So I would love for you to share a little bit with our audience just about you, but how I like to frame this is a little more little unique to most podcasts. I like to ask people, if we met at like a networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
Okay. I'm Chase Kocher, born and raised Austinite. Austin's obviously a big tech hub these days, so been fortunate enough to kind of grow up within the craziness of a little community turning into a giant city. And I played basketball in college, so certainly a big sports fan, and definitely derived, I'd like to believe, skills and things of that nature from playing high level sports, and would love to learn more about what you do.
Man, so tell us, family.
Yeah, so I grew up with 5 brothers and 1 sister.
I bet that was some awesome full contact basketball games in the backyard there.
We could talk for 2 hours about it. Yeah, it was. I fell right in the middle, so I got my share of getting beat up on, and
no blood, no foul.
Yeah, exactly. That's even to this day, the way we show affection is by making fun of each other and picking on each other, and but fighting for meals, fighting for dad's attention, and it was kind of just a way of growing up. But we're all best friends, so it's just kind of it was a true blessing. But my closest to youngest brother, Jake, was working with a tech startup here in Austin when I started Aim4Hire, and we actually lived together for that year. And after 4 or 5 months, he's like, I want in. So he ended up joining and really leads a lot of our business development and finding new companies to work with, partnering with venture capital groups in town. So family's huge to me. And yeah, I've just been in Austin growing up, moved around quite a bit, but found my way back about 8 years ago.
Okay. So you mentioned Aim4Hire. So walk us through kind of the journey. I mean, nobody just wakes up, they go to college, play basketball. Didn't get drafted by the Lakers, so I had to find something else to do. But what was that journey that that post college journey that brought you to Aim4Hire?
For sure, you have an identity crisis. I think whether you're an athlete or maybe it's even something else, that like a hobby that became kind of like a job in high school or college, and you kind of have to, you graduate and you're kind of thrown into the workforce officially and having to provide for yourself. And I think that's, for me, I had to kind of look myself in the mirror and be like, what can I take that I'm good at and try to apply that to the world. And frankly, like, especially being in Texas and being close to Austin, like tech was the future. Now that was probably a global thing, the tech's future, but you just look around and everything seemingly has some tech enablement or tech involvement.
Austin's a special place.
It is. And even as a college student, you start turning in your essays online, and you start, you're typing all your papers. There's no handwritten things anymore. It's kind of like you see the direction. So for me, I knew that tech was the space that I wanted to be in, something that I thought was a long-term and an ability for me to move up quickly. So I targeted the tech space straight off the bat. Now, the company that offered me the most money was a tech consulting and recruiting company. They also offered me the ability to be outside sales, like interfacing with customers. So I was like, perfect. I'll use this as a way to meet with all these companies in town, and then eventually I'll just choose one of these companies and just work for them. Recruiting wasn't even, really wasn't even in my mindset at that point. But fortunately, doing it, after a year or so, I got recruited away to launch an office for a recruiting company in Austin. So I was drastically underqualified at 23, 24 years old trying to do that. And I was still, and I give them credit for giving me the opportunity, because it was kind of one of those things where like, I'd be darned if I was going to fail. So I just worked my tail off. So, and from there, it was 3 years of doing that, building that out, and just really kind of learning how the industry works. And I wanted to work with startups. Like I wanted to recruit, I wanted to help startups hire and compete with Facebook and Google and Amazon. I like fighting for the little guy. I like the underdog story. So it's like, to me, I didn't feel like there were a lot of companies in town that were doing that. So I just felt like, why not kind of branch off and start Aim4Hire, really targeted at those like super specific, super selective tech startups that need great talent, but they can't offer everything that, Google can.
So this is a really strange question. How tall are you?
I'm like 6 foot, 5'11" / 6 foot.
Okay. So
yeah.
so you got a 6 foot guy that's playing at a pretty high level college basketball. If Scrappy is not under his name, he is not making it on the court.
Yeah.
And you just carried that from the court to the office.
In middle school and high school, I was so tiny. Actually, my freshman year of college, I grew 5 inches. So if it wasn't for
Scottie
that,
Pippen.
yeah. Me and Scottie Pippen should never be in the same sentence when it comes to basketball. But
that may be the only time you'll ever hear that.
I will take that. It was one of those things where I get to college and I was kind of done with basketball, and then I grew and ended up finding my way. So it was a great journey. But yeah, it's being scrappy is what it was all about. I think my dad was kind of raised us that way, and with 5 brothers, you kind of almost have to.
Hey, if you want to eat, yeah, that's right. There's 5 guys reaching in the bowl. Yeah, you've got to be scrappy for sure.
That's the truth.
It's interesting. You mentioned that it was almost like you had a job in college, as an athlete. And my son had an opportunity to play D1 soccer, and he said, Dad, he said I might be number 13, out of 11. And he said, it's just a full-time job. I wouldn't have time to do anything else. So I fully understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's, and I think, and I have just as much appreciation and respect, when we're hiring for like people that, worked a job while they were going to school or help pay their way through something. I think, and nothing against people that didn't do those things, but I think there's a value add that you get out of people like that have been through those experiences at a young age.
So when you took that leap and you said, okay, I'm not going to work for this company anymore, I'm just going to start my own gig, were there things that you learned at that previous company that you said, you just kind of made a mental note, maybe you actually wrote it down, you said, okay, they do this and I am not going to do this because I don't agree with the philosophy, or I'm not trying to ask you to throw them under the bus, but were there lessons you learned that you think, when I'm on my own, I'm going to do things different because of these reasons?
For sure. And I think even, playing, I make a lot of sport analogies, but I mean, even playing with coaches, and like, if I'm a coach one day, like, what things would I do that my old coach did, and what things would I do differently? I think you learn to emulate things that you feel are effective, and then you kind of push against the things that you feel like are ineffective. So that was a lot of how I felt, having worked with a big recruiting company, then a kind of a mid-sized one, is it helped me identify kind of like the things you do well, and the things that I found, that I got joy out of, but I also felt like I was the most effective at. And I really just kind of pinpointed, like, that's the area that I want to really follow. So yeah, I would say, overall, it was a great experience, but, when you're working for someone else, like, you're following somewhat of their direction. And they allowed me to dictate some of that, but I think, there certainly is a different level of freedom, but obviously a different level of responsibility when you start your own firm. Everything relies on you. So I think, I have a lot of admiration for companies that I've worked with, but, we didn't agree on absolutely everything. So I think when we started Aim4Hire, that was kind of the focus. Was I didn't want to be a staffing firm, just another recruiting company that, there's just a million of them. And the barrier to entry, it doesn't take much to start a recruiting company. So I was pretty honed in on working with a very specific client base and targeting a very specific talent base. And and really kind of learning as much as I could before I took that leap and decided to start my own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of that meme that says, when you're an employee, you're working for someone else's dream. You're building someone else's dream, and that's so true. And but when you take that leap, I mean, you also take all the responsibility and all that. You're the one that now is waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning wondering, was that a good decision, or was not going to make payroll on Friday? That type of things.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I love the way that I'm a huge sports fan, so I love sports analogies too. But I am curious, like when you did take that leap, what was like your USP? What was the thing that you said, this is what is going to be the one thing that's going to really differentiate us from, even indirect competitors?
It was going to be frankly that I especially for early parts of the company, that I was going to outwork absolutely anybody that tried to compete with me. And it was just like, all I needed was a crease in the door at any company that needed help hiring. And at the time, everyone and their mother was hiring. So I was like, I just need a crease in that door, and like, I'll deliver. Now, like, that changes when you start hiring people and you're relying on them to deliver. But I think it was, for one, it was going to be that, like, I got an experience of how recruiters generally did things. And I came from kind of a sales, customer facing, how I got in the industry, and then taught myself how to recruit. So I'd like to believe that there were some core competencies that I felt like I did a little differently on the recruiting perspective, but most of it was that, never, as cliche as it is, just never give up. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this done. And I knew
With
that
integrity and excellence, though.
Yeah, and attention to detail. And I thought one of the biggest things was, if you're gonna partner with startups, which I felt like not a lot of companies were doing. So that was really number one. Was like, I am now their voice, and I'm gonna sell that to them, of like, I'm gonna scream from the rooftops your company, what you guys are about, what you do, and I'm gonna spread the word in Austin because this is my city, and I'm gonna make sure that everyone here knows who you guys are. And whether it's good or bad or indifferent, not every company's perfect, but I think when you're a small company, not a household name, hiring a recruiter that finds you talent, but also will get the name of your company out there, like that kind of validates what they're doing. And I think that ended up kind of being the service that I provided early on.
I think that, I've done this show for 5 years every week, and talked to people in 30 different countries, 280 startup founders or whatever. That it's interesting. So many people, they're like consultants, or they, provide a service. They're like, I wanted to work with startups, but the one thing I figured out, startups don't have any money is what they said over and over again. So I'm thinking, as you started, you're thinking it's like you've now niched down because, you can afford to, because you're a little more established, you have a little more runway. But I would think really early, that was another differentiator, was that, some of the larger places wouldn't even touch startups because they couldn't pay. They couldn't pay for those types of services. And you're thinking, I'm going to beat you on hustle. I may even beat you on price early.
Yes, that's precisely right. And I think that's an interesting part to call out to entrepreneurs or future business owners is, I had this idea of what I wanted to do, and then there was a execution and finding out, how do I keep making money, or how do I make money in general? And you kind of have to decide, like, how far you're willing to kind of veer off maybe that vision you had.
Yeah.
Like you said, I wanted to work with startups, but they can't afford the fees. They can't afford the same fees that maybe a bigger company could afford.
Yeah.
So
unless they're in a financing round or something, that they would have some money behind it, maybe.
exactly. And that's, to be fair, there's probably an asterisk next to we work with tech startups. Like, a lot of these companies either have a lot of funding, or they've had early success and they've just generated a pretty crazy amount of revenue. So they're not like 1 or 2 person shops per se. Now, in the first year of our business, I was working with 2 person companies, 20 person companies, 100, you name it. Like, I was going to do it. But I think kind of as we grew, like you said, some startups can't pay, or you end up kind of getting screwed because they didn't pay you on time, or they didn't pay you at all. They ran out of funding.
Yeah.
But that was
give
kind
you
of
equity.
Yeah. And we did that in some cases where it's like you take a calculated risk
Yeah.
and but you also want them to know you're bought in. So I mean the equity part to me was like, I don't know if this is ever going to be worth anything.
Yep.
And it's such a small portion of stock at that point, but it does give both sides kind of like we both have skin in the game. Let's partner together and actually get things done versus just be this weird third party consultancy type relationship.
Yeah, that is, I love that. And as you have, so let me rephrase that. So when you started Aim4Hire, what year did that actually start, and kind of walk us the journey from that point to where you are today?
Yeah, we started in 2019. It was January, February of 2019. So
Pretty rough time to start.
yeah. So yeah, no kidding. Frankly, I just was a one-man shop doing whatever for, just trying to make enough money so I could start hiring people. And 6 months in, or not even, probably 4 or 5 months in, I had an intern, and then we made our first full-time hire. And then my brother came along, and then from there, like that's really when obviously COVID and the shutdowns and the world caught fire there. And so yeah, for that to happen, the first year or so of the business was scary.
Yep. There's a lot of those stories out there.
Yeah, so we were founded in February of 2019. So we just I guess had our 4-year anniversary, if you will. But the first 3 to 6 months, just a one person show. I just did whatever was needed, whatever was going to generate revenue. Those early customers, I think you kind of have, as a business owner or anybody that starts your own company, you'll start to learn that those first customers, those first people that are willing to give you a shot, you kind of just have you're indebted to them, but obviously, you'll always remember those companies. And I think for me, that's how it was, and getting the opportunity to do that and kind of make enough money to start hiring and start building out a team. We had our first intern, I think 4 months in, who, really it ended up becoming a full-time employee of ours 2 years later, and is one of our top performers. He's outstanding. So it's, built an internship, and then we added another full-time employee. And then I think we added 2 more right before really, the COVID life in the world kind of, got flipped upside down there. So we, I think I mentioned we were scared. I mean, I was scared, I'll be honest. I think business owners or entrepreneurs sometimes have this stereotype of just being absolutely fearless. And maybe in some cases they are. Yeah, exactly. I was scared, and I think it was scary to see other people scared. And I think, when COVID happened, obviously it put everybody on their heels. And I know that a lot of companies, were much more affected than fortunately we were. But we kind of just took this mindset of like, we're building a brand. We don't have a lot of expenses at this point, outside of some employees who had taken low salaries to be a part of the early journey. So really we just kind of went out and connected people with any jobs that we could find.
Yep.
And not for pay, like really just kind of pro bono, like let's build a brand, let's meet people, let's help people. We connected a lot of CTOs with other CTOs in town just so they could talk through, like, if they had to do a layoff, how they were handling it, maybe what they saw happening, even though obviously none of us really knew what the future looked like at that point. I think that was a huge paramount kind of part or time of our business, because I think, obviously a lot of things could go wrong and did go wrong. But we had a pretty diversified client base at that time, some in healthcare, some in gaming. We kind of just started looking at what industries will be fine, or grow even because of this. So the beauty of being a small company is you can be pretty agile. You can adapt faster than a big company can.
Yep.
So we just, on a dime, kind of just decided that these are the companies we think will be hiring, and we're going to do everything we can to get an opportunity with those. So
there's a fine line between pivoting and viewing an opportunity. It really is. It's like I think we think, okay, I had this trajectory and I pivoted. It's almost like there's a negative connotation with that says I kind of missed it the first time. Maybe nothing is further from the truth. maybe you were right on it. It's just that the market changed, the field changed, it's so, yeah, it's interesting. It is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in tech, I mean, if you can't adapt or be agile in the tech world, I mean, you talk about things that can change quickly. I mean, even this ChatGPT, OpenAI, like just on it, things are going bad, tech is getting smashed. OpenAI, all of a sudden, investments, money, excitement, scariness of this AI thing, just out of nowhere. I think if you can't pivot, I think you're right though. Pivot does have kind of a negative connotation to it, but frankly, in basketball, having pivoting on I think triple threat and pivoting it can be effective because it makes you more multifaceted if you're able to pivot.
Yeah.
If you just have one direction, you best hope that direction is a successful one.
Your first step better be Allen Iverson.
Yeah,
you only have one direction.
You better have a darn good software product if you've decided on one area and that's the only area you decide to go in. Like you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. So I think diversification, being able to pivot, being able to adjust is just such a powerful skill for a company or a startup to have, especially in tech.
I mean, it's interesting to see just the trajectory in a pretty short period of time, less than 4 years that or right at 4 years, so where you're kind of coming to that time. But it seems like to me that it is an incredibly competitive space that you operate in. And it's not just, just like for like, it's not just shop versus shop. It's not just, agency versus agency or whatever. It's like, seems like there's like, online stuff that you've got to deal with. And there's people just popping in that are just consultants and internal versus external. And I mean, there just seems so many different directions, and it's kind of hard to determine like who you're even competing with sometimes. And how do you manage that in such a highly competitive space?
Yeah, it's I think in some ways
I wasn't worried about it till you brought that up.
Yeah. I was like, competition.
That's right.
No one else does recruiting like us. No, it's what drove me to the industry, frankly. Or kept me in the industry rather, is that there are so many companies that do it. But there is kind of a level or almost like a standard, like just like real estate brokers or other service providers, like, there's kind of this level that most companies operate at. And then you have some people that are those really top tiers, and then you have some people that aren't. The thing that attracted me to the space was it's highly disruptible. It's a space that's kind of followed a similar protocol for a long time. And, I saw it firsthand with working with the bigger recruiting companies, and they're designed to support big companies. I mean, they're very transactional, very high volume, lots of the mass messaging that I'm sure your inbox is filled with on LinkedIn with this kind of, role, all types of jobs.
You speak.
Yeah. Gosh, but that's the kind of stuff that fires me up, I think. And so frankly, yes, it can be daunting when you Google how many recruiting firms are in Austin or in Texas. But I also think, you hear about all these negative experiences people have with recruiters. And I think it just leaves a door open to companies or groups of people that are really trying to do it the right way. And so for me, it was like, it wasn't hard to start my own company and get it going, because you really just kind of have to stick to what got you to where you are and what you understand like is a differentiator from the rest of recruiters. So I think for us, it can be challenging knowing that there's all these other firms in town and online, and there's these AI platform that I'm sure will begin, they've already been some over the years, but with ChatGPT and stuff, I'm sure they'll integrate something into their LinkedIn with Microsoft having ownership in them. So recruiting will change. And I think the argument against the AI and the software enabled recruitment has always been like, can you put a human being into a software platform? Like what happens, that connection that a person has with another person, empathy, being able to recognize like, qualities about that person over a
Mhm.
phone call or
Or
video call.
nuances, even facial expressions and that type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's, we'll see how that disrupts the space. I'm sure it will. But I think there just has to be kind of a level in my mind of like, if there's going to be all these other firms, like, we've got to set a standard, and then
Mhm.
you have to live up to that standard every single time. That's the
Yeah.
difficulty, I think, is you recruit for a company and you do a great job, you bring on a new customer, and you got to do it all over again. Like, you got to
Mhm.
be able to deliver at that level again and again. Otherwise your brand takes a hit.
Mhm.
Word of mouth is pretty strong in tech. So people will find out that if you suck or if you're good at what you do in
Mhm.
recruiting. So I think that's what I love about space, but also it can be frustrating because you kind of get like the conglomerate of all recruiting, you kind of get thrown into that bucket of
Right.
like, oh, you're just a headhunter,
Right.
or you do staffing, or you
Mhm.
just fill seats. And I think that can be frustrating because I think in a lot of ways we've tried to be different than that and like really work on roles that were like hugely pivotal positions at
Mhm.
tech companies where they can't afford to make the wrong hire at a startup stage.
Yeah.
I think we love that, we thrive on that, but it can be frustrating with the recruiters that kind of just mass message everybody and kind of give a bad name.
I think the analogy, drawing the analogy between that and real estate is a good analogy, because there's so many people that they're in and out in 3 months, and that's what you're facing.
And it's not their fault. Like, I knew it being a big firm. They tell you, you have all these metrics and you got to
Mhm.
send out 1,000 messages a day or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And of course, if you have to send out 1,000 in a day, like, you're just gonna click the template and just send it to 1,000 instead of, really reading people's profiles and trying to
Right.
determine if they fit this opportunity. So it's just attention to detail, and I think just different business models.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Yeah, real estate's a great one. I think we've found a lot of parallels in what we do to kind of, we partner with some real estate firms and connect some of our clients to them to help them find office space. And it's definitely, it takes effort to be one of the good ones in a space
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, highly competitive and highly transient, space. But um, do you hire, um, I guess, clones of yourself? Is
That's
that
such a
what you look for, when you
that's
hire people?
That's such a great question because I having helped startups hire, I see, you see their hiring patterns.
Mhm.
And how do people decide who they want to hire? You have those like ones that hire people that like, this is the kind of person I'd love to grab a beer with and watch a sports game with, so I'm going
Mhm.
to hire them. And then you have these others like, I'm not sure we'll be friends, but they're incredible at what they do, and this is what we need. So you kind of just have these different strategies or different mindsets around hiring. For us, to be honest, I love hiring people that are different than me.
Mhm.
But there have to be some intangibles, and that's really how we built the firm. Was we're going to hire people that have the go-getter, hungry.
Yeah.
A lot of them played college sports. A lot of them worked their way through college. Kind of I was
Mhm.
talking about earlier. They have that like kind of intangible skill set. They just didn't have the tangibles around tech. So we have ex college pro athletes on our team. We have people that worked in the airline space, people that worked in HR, people that worked in teaching. But they had that drive and they had the commitment to kind of what we were trying to do and working with these smaller
Mhm.
companies and giving them a voice. So I'd say that honestly, I've hired a lot of people that did have a similar background as me. But I've also hired a lot of people that didn't.
Mhm.
And I think, you've gotta, that's probably something looking back, if I could talk to myself 4 years ago, it's kind of trusting and really listening, really interviewing as many people as you can.
Right.
And I think taking a risk sometimes when
Mhm.
you're hiring, because I think there were times where we needed certain things that I didn't have or the team didn't have. And in those cases, you really have to decide, like, are you willing to take that risk in hiring somebody that brings it to the table, but you're not sure if it's going to work or not.
I love the way you kind of frame that, yes and no. It's like a nice
Yeah,
political dance that you did there. But
I,
I I don't hire clones, but I hire people that have certain characteristics that I'm looking for. I want grit. I want, stick to this. I want a work ethic. I want, hunger. Those types of things that are kind of built in, but they can look different and they can act different, but those core skills are still there.
The core skills, and frankly though, we've had folks that, I mean, there are a lot of people on our team that they're just super different than me, and it's just been so cool to see. And now, like, I've morphed myself into being around them and starting to kind of be more like them, or emulating things that I thought were really special about them. But those were maybe those were the hires that, like, early days hiring people, or friend of a friend types. And then you start kind of exploring past that network and really looking at people that you don't know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's that is a journey in and of itself. We help companies hire, but obviously hiring ourselves was a journey for me. I had to learn quite a bit about how to do that the right way. I'm still learning.
It is, yeah, and it may be a work in progress for a long time. But so as we kind of transition here at the end, and I do want to honor your time today. I know you got other things to do, but I've got a couple of 3 just like rapid fire questions that I don't want you to think about them. I just kind of want you to respond,
Okay.
as they come up. So, do you think that there's such a thing as an entrepreneur gene?
No, I don't. I just think I just think that there are so many entrepreneurs that come from different backgrounds and have different skill sets. Like, the independent visionary is kind of the stereotype. Like, they're visionary, independent, they work hard. But then I have met people that are not that, and they're something else. And frankly, I'm not that. And I believe in myself, and I believe in this company. So I was just really willing to work hard, and I'd like to believe, like, I'm kind of empathetic and passionate for human beings. I like helping others and connecting people. So I don't. I think in a lot of ways you grow up so much throughout your life that it's not something you're born with. I think in a lot of ways sometimes it's developed through an experience.
Right. So it's like nature versus nurture type thing. So
yeah, exactly. I think, I've been so fortunate to get to work with so many entrepreneurs, and it's just like, it'd be hard for me to say, like, oh, they just were born with it. Like, so many of them, have their own incredible stories that got them to where they are, and now they're armed with the skills to lead a company.
So my next question may change your mind. So you may want to go back. Can I refer back to the question?
Was that a trick question?
No, it was not a trick question. And actually, it's on the fly too. I've never asked this question in 280 episodes or whatever. So
okay, cool.
I am curious. When did you figure out that you were virtually unemployable anymore? You said, I've got to do this on my own. Because you wouldn't have been happy staying where you were, right?
Correct. I think I would have been content, but I was not. I would not have been happy. Honestly, I think pretty early in my career, I knew that I wanted to run the show at some point, but that I needed to learn how to do it. And so, yeah, I would say, gosh, I was so focused on my last company, and I think just once I realized that it was time, so I guess really probably just a couple months before I really left there and started this, I was so focused on that, and I think you just kind of eventually just have that moment of like, I think it's time for me to take this risk.
See, I mean, I'm proud of you. I mean, you stuck to your guns there. I tried to trap you with it.
I know you did.
Trick question.
I caught myself saying that. I'm like, I knew
maybe
I did. Yeah.
Maybe there is a gene.
Maybe
I have it.
The reason I say it, playing basketball, I was always so worried about myself and how I played and how my coach thought of me. And then in college, my mindset completely changed of like, how is this affecting the rest of the team? Like, you become the team captain and leader, and you start thinking about other people. And that's why I think if it wasn't for that experience, I might not have had the mindset to start a company and run it in a way that was about other people.
Yeah.
So I just think, maybe you are born with it, but I'd like to believe that, I think anybody could be an entrepreneur if they have the right things happen, or they learn a certain thing that kind of opens their mind to it.
And I think I need to rephrase how that question's formed, because I think what I'm really asking is, do you think there are certain people that are born that would never be satisfied until they went out and started something on their own?
Absolutely.
I guess that's my question that I'm really
Absolutely.
looking for, is that, and I mean, at some level, I think if you really dug down, I think you have a little bit of that in you, that would be, it's kind of like a contented dissatisfaction, at the same time, where you're like, I made it to, I'm number 8 on the team, but I could have been number 5 if I'd have worked just a little harder, if I'd have taken a little risk here,
That,
that type of thing. So yeah, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I just think
no,
maybe that's the way, that I'm trying to frame that question that I'm getting to. But
that's a
uh,
great call out. And I think, never being satisfied, like always, pleased but never satisfied. You're always wanting to push the envelope and try new things, or you get bored doing the same thing over and over and you got to keep moving upward. Like,
yeah,
maybe you could argue that those people are destined to be entrepreneurs, but I think those people sometimes also aren't the best teammates
oh,
or
for
leaders of
sure,
a
or
team.
leaders, yeah.
Yeah.
They may have vision, they may start something, but they can't run it. I think the people that it's interesting, I've asked this question, the people that I think tend to say that there's not a genetic disposition are the ones that probably would be better at running something long term,
Yeah.
versus somebody that is just a creator. I mean, at heart, I'm just a creator. I'm a starter. I'm a serial entrepreneur type thing.
They're like artists. I mean, they just have a
Yeah,
way of doing things that's unique, but artists rarely have teams. It's just they're one
right.
person shows. So yeah, I think it's a great call out, but I have so much respect for like the people we've hired and how they've shaped what the company ended up turning out to be. And how it's shaped, who we work with and what our identity is, that I think I'm just maybe I just have a different mindset when it comes to that. I personally just enjoy so much more as a team winning versus as an individual
Yeah.
winning. And maybe that was maybe something that spurred me as well to kind of start my own thing. Is I wanted to build out my own team, one that I felt like, I got to choose and
Mm-hmm.
put together and train and help, and get to kind of, you reap the rewards of their reward. You get
Yeah.
to watch them succeed and be a part of that.
And I know that the team benefits from that, that vision of leadership you got. But speaking of being a leader, as we wrap, just really quickly, give me 1 or 2 things that today as a leader, just one-liners that say, man, if I'd have known this in 2018, 2019, it would have made my life so much easier. That it, doesn't necessarily apply to the industry you're in, but could be in any industry.
Yeah. Well, knowing a global pandemic was coming would have been nice to know. Though I'm not sure it would have impacted anything, to be fair. I would say hard work and dedication can get you almost through anything, is kind of my mindset. I used to fear that I wasn't the smartest guy, I wasn't the most experienced guy. But, having run the business, it's like if you're willing to work hard and dedicate yourself, there are a few things that you can't get through.
Right.
There are some things that you
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything about, but like a pandemic. But I think if you're willing to do that, I really do think that in a lot of ways, can get you wherever you want to go. Keep your keep your cost manageable.
Mm-hmm.
Money, you're running a business, especially if it's a for-profit business and you have payroll and you have expenses. I think you got to pay attention to your numbers. It's not sexy. It's not fun if you're not good at it. Find someone that's good at it. Pay for the help because it's
Yep.
worth doing that.
They'll pay for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And what else did I tell myself? Balancing work life, but I hate the word balancing because people have been lecturing me on balancing my life for a while and I've yet to do it. Don't stop exercising or eating right or whatever it is outside of work. I think you got to find a way to keep yourself healthy. I had to have missed 2 or 3 months collectively. Now I've worked through those days mostly, but collectively between actually getting COVID and just colds and fevers, and if you work yourself so hard, you're going to be sick. And it's just like, you got to find a way to still maintain diet, exercise, sleep, hopefully a social life of some kind. But it's do as I say, not as I do. So I've had to learn over the
It's
last
a
4
learned
years.
skill. That's right.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
an acquired skill.
It's hard when it's your baby and you
Yep.
put all your money you have into it,
Yep.
and of course you want to just keep working until it succeeds. But I think sometimes your health is pretty important, I think, to an entrepreneur, that you're, keeping your mind right.
And you have the weight of not just yourself. I mean, you feel the weight of everyone that is getting that, that W-2 at the end of the year from you, that you're thinking, I'm kind of carrying this load, or feel like I'm carrying a lot, not because my team is, but I feel like I'm carrying this load as the leader of the parade here.
Well, as an entrepreneur, yeah, in a lot of cases, you probably had some success in a previous job before starting your own company. So maybe you have, I had some financial padding, though most of it went into the company. A lot of people you hire, it might be their first, second, third job. They might not have that security blanket that you have. So yeah, frankly, what keeps me up at night is just delivering for them than it is for myself. I've been fortunate enough. I know I could go out there and go work somewhere and make some money if I needed to, but our company, our team, I think, becomes your priority once you start.
Yeah. And I love the chat today. I loved all the sports analogies we got to throw in there and kind of dance around. And I mean, we mentioned Allen Iverson and Scottie Pippen in one interview. I mean, and in your name, all at the same breath, all three of those basketball greats. But man, thank you again for just taking time and just sharing your story and just making me laugh and just really seeing value to the questions that you answered, and you were really thoughtfully answered, for our audience, and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Chase, thanks again. Have a great week.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks for having me.
We hope you heard some great takeaways. Make sure you follow up with our guests today and show them the support they deserve. As always, thank you for listening and playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide.